All right, how are we doing? This is Mr. Emmons, and today we're going over section 8.3, how to factor trinomials of the form x squared plus bx plus c. All right, to begin, we're going to start filling out these tables, identifying pairs of numbers that multiply to a given number, and then we have to identify the sum of each pair of numbers. So 6, for example, that would be 1 times 6 would equal 6, as would 2 times 3. However, we also need to consider -1 times -6 and -2 times -3. And then the sums, 1 plus 6 would be 7, 2 plus 3, 5, -1 plus -6, -7, -2 plus -3, -5. On to part B, -8, you'll have 1 times -8, 2 times -4. But we also need to consider -1 times +8 and -2 times +4. Then their sums, this would be -7, -2, +7, +2. Why are we doing this? We're going to try and factor something like x squared plus 7x plus 6. In order to do that, first, we're going to say that a is equal to 1, b is equal to 7, c is equal to 6. Essentially just identifying our coefficients in order. We're going to multiply a times c, which in this case is 1 times 6 or just 6. And now I need to find two numbers that multiply to 6 but add to our b value of 7. And so if we look back at that table, what multiplies to 6? Which pair of two numbers multiplies to 6 and adds to 7? It's got to be 1 and 6. Those are the two numbers that I'm looking for. What am I going to do with them? We'll take this x squared plus 7x plus 6, and we're going to split that middle x term into plus 1x and plus 6x. And keep the rest of the polynomial from above. Okay, we kept the x squared, we kept the positive 6. The only thing we did was we split up that 7x into a plus 1x and a plus 6x. From here, this is what we talked about yesterday. When we have four terms, we'll factor by grouping. Looking at these first two terms, we can identify a greatest common factor of x. The second two terms, greatest common factor of, I'm going to say, a positive 6. I really need to stress that because this third term is positive, our GCF in this second group also needs to be positive. So back to the first group, factoring out the greatest common factor of x, and then dividing x plus 1. Second group, GCF is a positive 6. Please remember your signs. And then dividing, we'll have x plus 1. We'll know we did this correctly if we end up with a common binomial, because then this will factor to that same common binomial, and then sort of the greatest common factors together in a set of parentheses. Right? Essentially, I think I said yesterday, we are dividing this first group by x plus 1, and that's what gives us the x. And then we're dividing this second group by x plus 1, and that's what gives us the plus 6. But in like super layman's terms, we'll just say the common binomial is written, and then everything else, the two GCFs, go together in their own set of parentheses. All right. Part B, we'll take a look at, once again, a equals 1, b equals -5, c equals 6. We're going to do a times c. It's still 6. But now, so we are looking to find two numbers that multiply to 6, but this time they need to add to -5. If we go back to our table, multiply to 6, but add to -5, it's -2 and -3 that we're going to use this time. How do we use them? We'll take the x squared minus 5x plus 6, and we're just once again breaking up that x term. Keep the x squared. The x term is negative 2x minus 3x now, sort of uncombining like terms. Then greatest common factor. In this second group, I'll say again, the sign of this third term will determine the sign of the greatest common factor from the group. So it needs to be a negative 3. Factoring out from the first group, there's your greatest common factor, x squared divided by x, negative 2x divided by x. Now, our greatest common factor of negative 3. If I divide negative 3x by negative 3, that gives me x. And then positive 6 divided by negative 3, positive divided by negative, negative 6 divided by 3, 2. I did it correctly because the binomial matches. There's that common binomial. And then, as I've said before, if we divide this group by x minus 2, we'll have x. Divide this group by x minus 2, we have negative 3. So our final answer, final factorization, x minus 2 times x minus 3. The quantity x minus 2 times the quantity x minus 3. That's it. Now it's time to practice. Good luck.